All right. So, Sixth Invitational 2026 group stage predictions. Now, before we get underway with the video, you're going to have to bear with me because, as I outlined in my previous video um, from yesterday, that I still have that, you know, crunched up rib feeling, and the more I talk, the more it causes me to cough, and the more it hurts. So it's very fun, but like I said, I don't really know when it's gonna go away, and I want to talk about Siege, so we're just gonna have to bear with it. And right now, my sinuses are also very, um, how should I say? They're just acting up right now. It feels like if I bend over too much, that it's just gonna start dripping. So you're gonna have to bear with me for this video. I'll try to do as best as I can without looking too ill. So let's just go over the groups quickly. So Group A, we got FearX, M80, NIP, Project Zero, and Weibo. And Group B has Daystar, Elevate, Furia, Falcons, and Wildcard. And then Group C has Black Dragons, D+, Phase, G2, and Shopify. And then for Group D, we have Enterprise, Fluxo, Oxygen, SSG, and Secret. So, waiting on this video was kind of nice. Um, Waited a little longer than I anticipated, but it kind of worked out because they released the group stage schedule. So now we know 100% confirmed that every game of the group stage is going to be a best of three, and each team is not going to play out on like one of the days. So, like for example, on day one here, M80 don't play, and then like on day two, G2 who doesn't play. Um, so yeah, each team will play on 4 out of the 5 of the group stage days. So now for predictions. We're just gonna go Group A, B, C, and D, and then so on. So basically, yeah, you just have to get the correct team, and you predict for the first and second place, and then the team that gets sent to the airport. So Group A is definitely a hard group to predict because it's like outside of, in my opinion, the obvious first place, which is M80. I think a lot of these teams are really going to be fighting for the second place spot because we have NIP, who they've had a pretty good year this year. They've had a resurgence this year, but they haven't. They're not like back at the top of the world kind of resurgence. They're more like um, I'd say a potential top 8 kind of at a tournament is kind of where they've been at. Like they're like a quarter finalist is their like best they've shown. That's their ceiling right now. So NIP are definitely in consideration, and then same with Weibo. They're also kind of, in my opinion, on that similar level to NIP. Um, Both these teams were in playoffs at EWC, and then NIP made playoffs at Munich, and then Weibo missed playoffs at Munich by one game where they lost to G2 on the final day of Swiss. So definitely not like an embarrassing loss for Weibo to lose to G2. In my opinion, they're still definitely a very good team. But both these teams have their flaws, like every team, but theirs show more than others. Um, and then of course we have FearX, who are here even though like it feels like they haven't had a very good year. Like uh, outside of like Reload, but that was a tournament that had no impact on SI points or anything this year. So But yeah, outside of that, it's like, they weren't even winning their region, um, and they haven't been that good just among their regional play. They're still good enough to be here, but they haven't been like, you know, last year they were like the best team in Korea, but this year with the merger and as well as D plus breaking up the Brazilian roster, they've kind of fallen back to that third slash fourth best team in APAC North. And then we have Project Zero, who are the LCQ EU team, and they're definitely a special case because even though they only did beat one tier one EU team to be here themselves, um, they still beat everyone in that bracket to be here. Out of none of the tier one EU teams made it that were in the LCQ. It ended up being Project Zero, and the grand final of that LCQ was between two tier two teams. So it kind of says a lot about outside of G2, Falcons, and Secret how bad the European tier one teams were this year. Um, Not that Project Zero are like a bad team, but it's just like it's crazy that you have all these orgs in the EU and none of them can field not even a fourth place team. Like it felt like it was always like kind of just bouncing around that fourth spot this year between like VP and Gen G and that. Um, but yeah, for me, second place, I think I kind of either have to give it to Weibo or NIP, and I just feel like the slightly better pick for now. The more stable pick is NIP, and then for eliminated, I'm gonna have to go with the Fear X. God, it feels like my nose is gonna start dripping, bro. Oh, because of their inconsistencies this year in their own region, and I don't see if they can't be the best in their region, then I don't see any way they're going to be great internationally. Next, we have Group B. Now, Group B has Fiera, Wildcard, and Falcons as more the teams that one could probably see going top three in the group. Then we have Elevate and Daystar. Now, I think first place, it's like Falcons are bust here. I think they've just been a step above the rest of the teams this group this entire year. And then I'll do Eliminated first. For Eliminated, I'm doing Elevate, and you might be surprised that I'm not doing Daystar, but I mean, Daystar have already beaten Elevate when they played in the APAC playoffs this year. And you know, I don't like to take the import teams. I just don't like putting my money on them. There's just something about them that just feels wrong. And then for second, I think this one is a bit of a you could consider bold, but I don't know. I've been pretty impressed with Wildcard this year, and even though it's Furia, right? They have a lot of rumors circling around about that roster right now, and who knows what's going on there. But Furia, if those rumors are true about Furia could also always have dead team buff, and dead team buff is basically like when all the players know at the end of a tournament that the team's kind of gonna implode, so they play like they have nothing to lose, and sometimes it can give a performance boost for some reason. I don't know why. I see it a good amount in Counter Strike. Um, like for example, one of the biggest dead team moments in my recent memory it was two dead teams that faced off in the grand final. I can't remember what tournament, but I remember the teams. It was Falcons and G2, and it was when Falcons were dropping Dexter for Monacy, and it was G2 and Falcons were in that final. So it was two dead teams playing each other, and that whole tournament, right? Nobody really thought those either of those teams would do too well because they're both playing knowing that changes are coming right after the event, and then both teams made the final. So it's kind of weird how that works. Um, but for me, I feel like Wildcard have shown some good stuff this year, and that's kind of just why I'm going to take them in second place. But I don't really blame anyone for putting Furia in second or even first place. But I think Furia are kind of known for having those slow tournament starts. So actually, putting them in first place, I actually think is pretty risky now that I think about it a second time. Fuck, bro. God, it's gonna. I can feel the sign says. Well, I'm gonna take a sec to blow my nose here. Okay, I'm back. Yeah, I just let out. Good thing I muted the mic, because I just let out such a loud sneeze. Oh, love feeling like this. All right, Group C. Uh, this is kind of a doozy, especially like the top of the group. We got Phase G2, and I guess you could throw Shopify in there, but Shopify haven't been like crazy impressive internationally this year. And then we got Black Dragons and then D plus. Now, right now this year, I think G2 are just like a leg up above the rest of these teams. Though FaZe are also really good, of course, but FaZe they haven't had as good of a year as they had um, last year or the year before. Or when I say last year, I'm talking about more of their time before they won Invite um, in 2025. So like that year, and then the year before that, which would be 2023. Oh no, it'd be 24. Anyways, I just think G2 have been better than the rest of these teams this year, and I don't really see that stopping. I think they'll be quite good this tournament. I don't know if they'll win it, but I trust G2 to do well, because they have been all year. And then second, I will be taking FaZe because I think the first place, this matchup here, the matchup between G2 and FaZe is probably going to be the one that determines which team in this group gets first and which team in this group gets second. And then for eliminated, I think I just have to go with D plus, bro. They're just like ass. Like you could, argue Black Dragons. Oh well, they're the LCQ team, so they have to be the worst team. But you have to keep in mind that while both these teams are Brazilian, the D plus Kia team are Brazilian players that weren't even good enough to compete in Brazil, so they got shipped off to Korea, the most in the region notorious for being literally like the worst outside of Mexico. Um, so yeah, I think it has to be D plus here. Like there's just no way, in my opinion. And then next, I think we have another pretty hard group here, especially predicting first because I think this group has a lot of like teams that have had some pretty high highs this year, but also some bad spots. Like we're looking at SSG, right? They fucking were terrible in Munich. Even though like I think most people know they have a great system and a good team, but like I don't really know what happened at Munich, but they were It was bad. And then we had Oxygen, who this year in NAL, like, in group play they were quite good, but they ended up choking away the major spot entirely in stage two. And even though they had like an excellent stage in groups, they just blew it in playoffs. But they made it back. They made it here through the LCQ. But I think Oxygen are probably the best LCQ team heading into this tournament. Um, but there could be some sleeper ones because I think Project Zero are definitely like a sleeper team that could upset some games. Um, and then we have Enterprise, of course, who are the best Australian team, and I think they can actually be quite competitive against the rest of these teams in this group, and it's not as easy as just putting the APAC team in last place again. Um, and then we have Secret, probably the easiest team to bet on being one of the top two teams in this group because they've probably been the most consistent this year, but even then, recently they've been kind of on a downward trend, just a slight one, but they have been on a bit of a downward trend ever since the start of stage two. They haven't been as good as they were when they won EWC. And then we also have Fluxo W7M, who also had a disappointing result at the major. And if you're curious, Fluxo W7M, it's just W7M. They like merged with Fluxo, another Brazilian org, so they share the branding name now. Um, but it's the same team as W7M that everyone knows for this entire year. So for me, I'm gonna go with Secret in the first spot. I think Secret are just the safest bet. And then second, I think second is where it gets hard. Like, I could put SSG. Like, I don't think they're gonna blow it like they did at Munich again, which is why I want to put them here. Um, but then you have Fluxo W7M, who also like they can be super good at times, but also they can look super bad at times. Um, then we have Oxygen, who look really good in the LCQ, and they've definitely been practicing a lot. And then we also have Enterprise, right, who are by far the best Australian team heading into this tournament, and definitely, in my opinion, one of the better APAC teams in this tournament. So I think for second, I think I'm gonna go with the SSG gamble, but I wouldn't really blame anyone for putting most of these teams in the second or even the first place spot. And then for eliminated, I know I said um, that Enterprise are you know one of the better APAC teams here, but I still think there's just such a hard toss up between, in my opinion. I want to put either Auction or Enterprise here, but I just it's hard to trust that APAC teams when they haven't it's been a while, especially for this Enterprise team. They have to start doing better at tournaments than getting last place, because they got last place at EWC and they got grouped in Munich. So they've been grouped twice this year already, and yeah. So I'm going to just stick with the team that's been grouped already multiple times in, well, I wouldn't say this year, this competitive season, because we don't say this year, technically this SI is the first tournament of the year, but it's the last tournament of this competitive season. So yeah, once you make your predictions, of course, make sure you're logged into your Ubisoft account to save them, and then of course you can edit the predictions within this 8-day and 18-hour time frame before the um, group stage starts, and then I'll be back for predictions for playoffs when the group stage is over. So, and hopefully I'm doing better by then, because it would suck to keep making videos in this day. It doesn't feel very good, um, even though I really wanted to get this out. So yeah, if you um, stay till the end listening to my congested nasal cavity talk about these predictions, I really appreciate it, and thank you very much. And I will be back um, for playoff predictions for sure. And if anything else happens between then, I will make a video on whatever. So yeah, have a good one.